Welcome everyone to Comics from the Multiverse episode 277. I am Peter, and joining me as always is Matt.
Hey, if you guys see a commercial for something called Silver Shamrock, don't watch it. All right? Just keep going past. Like, it's not good.
It is Halloween Eve at the time of recording. By the time you get the episode publicly, it will be Halloween itself, at the very least, if not past and beyond Halloween.
He can actually leave his house, and people won't think he's wearing a mask. It'd be great.
And I do realize saying Halloween Eve's a bit weird because Halloween itself is All Hallows Eve, so what I really just said was All Hallows Eve, but that's okay. No one cares about that anymore. It's Halloween's the important one.
As I learned from a history TikTok this week, that the holiday from which it's based on, Samhain, however we're pronouncing it, actually starts at sundown. That's how their calendar works. So, Halloween doesn't actually start technically until the night of. So when is Halloween Eve? Is it the next day? Is that the real? I don't know. But pagan holidays are weird.
I don't know if I have the mental capacity right now to even comprehend the question you just asked me. This is a DC Comics podcast. We get together, we've read our DC books, and we talk about them. Although Matt conveniently forgot about the biggest one of the week.
Not conveniently. My shout didn't get any in, and then I forgot about it. There was nothing convenient about it.
Yes. So coming up on this week's show, I will be discussing Batman: The Long Halloween Special, Issue 1. But then we'll also have Detective Comics 1044, DC versus Vampires, Issue 1. I assume Matt read Checkmate, Issue 5, because he's...
Unfortunately, I did.
So that's a yes.
Yeah, we'll get there.
Yes. Robin, Issue 7, Wonder Girl, Issue 4, Task Force Z, Issue 1. Matt did read Deathstroke and Issue 2. I did not, but he seemed excited to talk about it. So, and then of course I have a Patreon book with American Vampire Survival of the Fittest, Issue 3. So that is what's coming up book wise on this week's show, and there isn't really much in the way of news, but have no fear, there's always going to be a top 10.
I'm gonna ace this one. I'm ready this week.
Are you ready? Okay. Okay, so this is the top 10 in ComiXology at the time of recording for new releases. Matt, have you got a guess at number 1?
Amazing Spider-Man 77.
No.
Damn. Well, I quit. It's the last time I prepare for anything.
I will say it is a pretty unremarkable week for DC in that Marvel are dominating this top 10 quite considerably.
So if it's not Spider-Man, it's got to be an X book then, right?
Yeah, Inferno issue 2.
Okay.
Are they just redoing every event they did in the 90s again?
They are.
Like,
yeah, I saw an ad somewhere. It might have been. I was looking up something. I don't remember. But apparently Madeline Pryor's back, and I was just like, oh, okay. So it's not just movies that are running stuff from 30 years ago back. It's comics too.
Oh well. Number 2 is Star Wars Darth Vader, issue 17. Number 3 is Marauders, issue 25. Number 4 is Amazing Spider-Man, issue 77. Number 5 is Sword, issue 9. That's just right. The top 5 are all Marvel books. Feel that pain.
That's a shame, because a bit of my mental state is this is a really good week for DC Comics. So it's a bit sad they're not in the top.
Yeah, Detective Comics does come out at number 6 though, so that's nice at least. Then Daredevil 35 at number 7. Number 8 is Wolverine 17. Number 9 is Robin issue 7. So we got a second DC book.
There we go.
And then Once in Future rounds out the top 10. That's issue 21 of that particular book. I mean, the rest of the DC stuff is basically all in the next row. So, your number 19 through 23 are all
Great.
DC. It's Wonder Girl, Checkmate, Vampires, Task Force, Long Halloween, like all of it's there. I think the thing about this week's books for DC is other than Detective Comics, it's not your big mainline books. It's all these fun spin-off miniseries and things like that. And those don't tend to sell as well. Well, I say that, but then you look at Marvel's top 5 there, and you've got Inferno 2 of 4, and Sword. Or so, I don't know. People like Sword, I guess.
I guess I don't know. I'm so out. I am so behind on all my Marvel stuff. Like even Hulk, which I was big on, I'm super far behind. I know that's ended now. And then Aaron's Avengers, I'm behind on, which is funny because the last thing I remember reading, they were dealing with vampires, and now DC's doing vampires. So, yeah.
Yeah, but they were doing in continuity vampires, so they couldn't just kill off everyone at the drop of a hat. More on that later. More on that later. Yeah, so pretty unremarkable top 10. Not a great showing for DC, at least at the time of recording. Obviously, it varies day to day and all the rest of it, but yeah. So there you go. I have to be honest. I see a lot of these Marvel books that are doing well, and it's when I see books like this, it's one like, see, when I see a good run on Daredevil, a good run on Cap, or whatever, I'm like, oh, these may be interesting, maybe I'll be into these. But when I see, like, an Inferno miniseries and then Marauders and Sword, I'm like, I have no interest in even trying to follow any of this.
I feel like if you're a Marvel fan, like, cut from the same cloth as me, you get annoyed when X-Men's in the top because it's like, oh, it's just because it's X-Men. Just like I always will chalk up, oh, Batman sells because it's Batman. I feel like you can say the same over there with X. So... And it might be good. I don't know. Just like the Bat stuff lately has been really good, so I don't complain as much. But yeah, it just seems people go for their franchises, and that's it.
Yeah. Maybe this is out of the loop, but I've never heard anyone talk anything nice about something called Marauders. Like
Well, I have because that was the Kitty Pryde book, and the whole point when it started was she couldn't get onto Krakoa or Krakatoa, whatever one it is, the Living Island, because of, for whatever reasons, like all mutants were supposed to be able to get there. She couldn't. At one point she dies and then gets resurrected, and it's a whole big deal. So like, I remember people talking about that book from the beginning. I don't know if it still has the same buzz. So, but I actually have no idea. After the minis, the Hoxpox stuff, I was out on X-Men because I'm like, this is very Hickman-y, and that's not my bag. So, I cut out and refocused on Hulk and Cap. And then I got very behind on those too. So I have no idea what's going on in the X. Like, I don't know if this Inferno is a big deal. I don't know if they're course correcting from Hoxpox. But I do know that the Marauders is still around. So,
well, that's my general reaction to a lot of these Marvel books is, yeah. I don't know what's going on. Oh dear. But yes, I suppose this is your Halloween special, if we even have such a thing on this show, given that it's Halloween weekend. I got a big stream now. It's pointless me advertising the big 12-hour stream because by the time most people get this, it'll be too late to go and check it out. But I am doing a big 12-hour stream tomorrow, so it'll be fun. Watch some movies. I got some caramel ding dongs to try that someone bought for me.
That sounds like something you call Connor. Caramel ding dong. It's an ironic thing because he's so pasty.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were trying to somehow turn ginger into caramel.
No.
In your head.
It just sounds like a funny insult for Connor. I remember one time a friend of mine got like pretty wasted and had me take him to Walmart so he could buy something called caramel ho-hos that he was very excited about. And he found them and ate the entire box in a sitting. So,
do you say caramel is caramel? Is that how you pronounce caramel?
Yeah, caramel. Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't respect the second A. It's just caramel. Caramel apples, caramel popcorn, caramel candy. Yeah.
Same with mobile. Y'all say mobile.
Mobile. Yeah. Aluminum instead of aluminium.
You're just ignoring parts of the word.
Yeah.
For no good reason.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys go and add extra U's into like favorite and color. So, hey, we ignored those. We're going to ignore other ones.
Yeah, but at least those ones still sound the same phonetically.
I mean, if I say caramel, people know what I'm talking about. Do you say crayon or crayon?
Crayon. Yeah.
Yeah, crayon.
Yeah. You also
So
add
people
in,
out there saying
but you add in extra ones to other words though, like vehicle. You just say vehicle. Vehicle.
vehicle.
Maybe you don't.
No,
But
you say vehicle if you live down below the Mason-Dixon line.
okay, I'm not saying
Right.
all Americans do it, but clearly enough of you do. I've heard it.
Yeah. You know. I was like me coming after you for Scrooge McDuck, Pete. Come on now. You don't sound like Scrooge McDuck.
Thank you, I guess.
Yeah.
That's one thing to establish. Uh,
Yeah.
all right, we can talk about books. We don't have to faff about.
Yeah. I mean, that's how we end up talking about wrestling, which we already did before recording.
That's true. That's usually where we diverge into nonsense wrestling talk, but we already kind of did that.
We already did.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. Let's just talk about books then. Let's get into the comics for the week.
Cool. What are we
Batman.
jumping into first?
I got my list here.
Okay.
We start it. All right. Batman: The Long Halloween Special Issue 1. Jeph Loeb writing with Tim Sale on the art. This is your team back from Long Halloween and Dark Victory, and it is a follow-up to Dark Victory. This is referencing things. This is set relatively soon after. I mean, it's maybe a bit of time has passed, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
This is, Robin's still new. We get Barbara Gordon introduced in this, although they're interestingly going the niece route rather than the daughter route.
Weird, but okay.
Yeah, well, if I remember correctly, the 3 specials they did before they did Long Halloween, they did like I think the trade's called Haunting Night, but it's like the 3 like 50-page specials like this one is that they did before. I believe one of those stories was about Barbara having to be adopted by Jim.
Okay.
Because of like
that might have been original continuity, because I remember there was James Jr. And then I remember that because isn't Gordon's wife named Barbara?
Yes.
As well. Yeah, so I think that was a little. But okay, I mean, she's still Barbara Gordon, right? Like.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a big deal really in the grand scheme of things.
It's not Alfred's niece, a la Batman and Robin.
Oh yeah, it's not that stupid thing. Yeah, no, still she's still Babs. And they kind of introduce her in a Batgirl kind of way in this, which is a little bit weird, in that she just dresses up as Batgirl for Halloween and wants to go trick or treating with Robin. So I'll
like
get,
that.
Yeah, because Batman or Gordon asks Batman at the signal, "Hey, my niece wants to ask you if your new kid Robin will go trick or treating with her." And much to his surprise, he actually shows up with Robin later in the issue, so they can go trick or treating. So we're dealing with a fairly young Dick and Babs in this. But now right away, it's like there's it's newspaper clippings of Harvey Dent. It's that Tim Sale art, so you feel like you're right back in the Long Halloween universe. And the general premise of this story is that Calendar Man is pissed about the Holiday Killer. He's pissed that his gimmick was taken.
Okay.
So he comes after Gilda and Harvey Dent because of this. He's livid. That is the
Does
premise
Calendar
of this.
Man look like Sean Gunn?
Who's Sean Gunn?
He's who was the Calendar Man in Suicide Squad. James Gunn's.
Oh, James Gunn's his brother.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say so. No, he looks a bit chunkier.
No.
And
Gotcha.
I would say if anything, he's got more of a Bendis look to him.
Oh.
If anything.
Gotcha.
So. Yeah, but I mean, it's a 50-page, but I won't go through it scene by scene necessarily. But I mean, I'll say this: it feels good to be back in this world. Generally speaking, I enjoyed the premise. I did think the odd little bit of characterization here or there was a little bit much. Or I'd say there was also a couple of moments where it kind of felt like when it was referencing things from Dark Victory and Long Halloween, it felt a little bit. I don't want to say fan servicey, but just a little bit like, oh, you're maybe over referencing things a little bit just to, and part of it may just be they wanted to remind people of things because they're actually continuing that continuity, which I wasn't so sure like how tied it was going to be. I mean, obviously it was going to be Tim Sale art. I figured it would probably be in continuity, but I didn't think it was going to be, no, this is a continuation in what happened to Harvey and Gilda after. And I do actually really like the premise. The Calendar Man being pissed that his gimmick was taken. It's great.
It's good.
He goes on a rant. He's like, the Riddler's got those stupid riddles. Joker's, well, he's just Joker. And, like,
right.
Everyone's got their gimmick. But somehow my gimmick was taken from me, and he's pissed that the spotlight was taken. And now that there's like almost someone in this universe who is associated more with holiday crime than he is, and he's not happy about it. So he's stealing all these gems that are related to months of the year, and Batman's trying to track him down, but he kidnaps Gilda at one point. Harvey makes a deal with Batman about going after them. Robin gets involved when he sees the bat signal go up and sort of ditches Babs, but not in a bad way. Like, she doesn't seem to mind. We see Gilda and Harvey reunited. Solomon Grundy's in there. He's been kind of working with Harvey as like a sort of bodyguard. Nice little touch that I liked is that James Gordon Jr. on Halloween, who's like a toddler or maybe like 5 at most, he's dressed as a little devil, which I thought was quite funny, given that in main continuity he grows up to be a villain and a serial killer. So I thought that was a nice touch. I like that Harvey at one point like smashes or covers up half of the bat signal, so that when he turns it on, it's just half of the bat signal. So it's like a Two-Face version.
Two-Face.
It's a nice little touch. And we have them meeting on the roof again. We have more of the Gordon Batman like dynamic between them. And honestly, it read very well. It's like 50 pages. It went in fairly quick. It did not feel like a slog at all. So credit where credit is due. I think Loeb and Sale's, or not, I shouldn't say Sale, but Loeb's writing has definitely not always been great, and it stuff that he did in the 2000s onwards is a bit more sketchy and hit and miss. But mostly this felt like it was back in the mold. I don't think it's as good as like Long Halloween or Dark Victory. But it does feel like it is part of that world again. And for better or worse, I think if you're wanting to be back in that world, there's things to like. But it has that art style. It has those types of layouts, the flat colors, all that stuff. Batman with his long ears. He pulls a Mission Impossible at one point where him and Harvey have swapped places, and he pulls off a mask, and it looks like the cowl's on under the mask, and I'm like, how did did the ears like fold down and then sort of stick up as soon as you took the mask off?
That's
like,
so stupid, but I love it.
Like, what was the process of this? So the big action is that Batman and Harvey have to like take on Calendar Man and save Gilda. And Batman does beat the shit out of Calendar Man. He's got blood all over his fists. And Robin's kind of questioning it a little bit.
Right.
So, yeah. But in the end, Gilda and Harvey, like, they've got a little boat and they sail away out of the sea. And it's like, well, this is not over. So this is the big thing, is there was news last week that implying that Loeb and Sale wanted to do more Batman after this. And reading this story, it's very clear that that's the intention. Because when it gets to the end, they're talking about how, is it possible that Harvey could come back to us? Like, he could become Harvey Dent again. And Batman says that, I think we were a bit naive there. I think Two-Face was always part of Harvey, just under the surface, waiting to come out. But it kind of ends on this, like, well, Harvey and Gilda have got something going on, and the Calendar Man knew about whatever it was, and now Batman suspects something, and it just ends with him jumping off the rooftop from Gordon and says the end for now. So clearly they're planning on more now. Well, that means they're just going to do like some specials every Halloween for a couple of years, and do the story that way, or if it means an actual miniseries at some point, like the Long Halloween, I don't know. I think I would lean towards maybe just a couple of more specials, like one next Halloween, one the Halloween after. Make it maybe a bit of a trilogy of 50-page specials rather than...
It's a shame that we already know the solicitations, that we're not getting one around Christmas, because quarterly would be pretty cool.
Oh, that would be neat. I think I'm just being cynical there. I don't really believe these two committing to a monthly book at any point, even if it is just 12 issues.
Yeah.
So... Yeah. and maybe every other month. Maybe they'll do a thing like, oh, it'll be bi-monthly, and you'll get one every other month for 2 years or something. Maybe they'll do something like that. But if I was to guess, I would expect another couple of Halloween specials over the next couple of years, and just hope we remember anything what that happened in the previous year's book, because that's a long time to wait between issues. I felt like, as much as they were shooting maybe a bit too much for nostalgia at a couple of points, there was a comfort blanket feeling to reading this. And it's, Tim Sale's art's not always perfect, right? It's a very distinct style, and there's definitely the odd face or whatever where it's like, okay, this is not necessarily where the strong parts of this art lie, but whenever you see, there's a panel towards the end where Gordon's coming to see Batman at the crime scene, and there's like sort of red light hitting his face from like the police siren or the ambulance siren, and the way it's just these flat colors with the black, but the red sort of creates the shape of the mustache, and the way it kind of hits his hat, it just, it looks really good. It definitely has that cartoony noir look that I would describe Long Halloween and Dark
stylized.
Victory. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like his Joker, ginormous teeth and jaw, right? Like when you look at the cover of the Long Halloween, but it's not bad. It's Tim Sale. Like there's a reason for it. So,
Yeah. I had a good time. I would say that it was a nice trip down memory lane, and I'm down for more once in a while. Like, I think, getting another one of these next year would be cool. And it's a far more exciting way to celebrate Halloween with a DC comic than, say, a 100-page anthology book with a bunch of 10-page stories.
Yeah, most of which are kind of not as good. This seems at least has quality there with Loeb and Sale reteaming for the first time since like when? Was it When in Rome?
Was that before or after Captain America White? I can't remember.
Oh, okay, that would have been before. I forgot about those. I forgot that one existed.
Yeah, well, that was late as well, because they did Hulk Grey and Spider-Man Blue were ages ago, and then it's been a while since and it's been a while since Captain America White now, but at the time it was a while between the previous three and that one, so
right.
But yeah, it was a bit of a comfort blanket, especially I think a lot of people read Long Halloween as one of their earlier Batman books in terms of like when they're just starting out in comics. So I think for a lot of people there will be a comfort blanket feeling to this, and but in Dark Victory, I always recommend Dark Victory. I feel like Dark Victory gets overshadowed and no one like bothers to recommend it, and it should be recommended because it is really good.
Yeah, I have it. I've never read it. I should, when I get some time, I should definitely go for it. But it is a big thick trade, like,
It's just an easy trade though. It's 13 issues. It's an easy one. Really, should read it.
Yeah.
So I guess as far
behind me, I'm sure they can see it behind me. So.
Oh sure. As far as rating this goes, I would. It's tough because part of me doesn't know if I'm doing this out of like not nostalgia, but out of just like the happy feeling that this generally has with it. But like, the concepts are good, the art is good. The odd little complaints, not like huge. I think I'll give it an 8 out of 10. I'm going to be reserved on this one and not give it too high a rating. I'll just say I had a really good time with it, and I think people who want more of that universe are probably going to enjoy the 50 pages with it. But at the same time, though, it's not reinventing the wheel. It is very like, like by relying so much on the continuity of Long Halloween and Dark Victory, it's also not doing anything spectacularly new either. If anything, the concept of Calendar Man being pissed that his gimmick was stolen is... It's almost like in the last 20 years, like some people have said that jokingly, like, hey, isn't Calendar Man kind of pissed that, isn't this Calendar Man's thing? And it's almost like they put that in as an answer to that. So.
Well, I like that because people also suspected Calendar Man early. I remember that being part of the thing, right? Because wasn't Long Halloween? It's kind of a mystery who the holiday killer actually was. Like they really hint that it's Gilda, but there are people out there that thought it was might be Calendar Man orchestrating things. I think I remember that. So the fact that Loeb brings it back around, that is a fun little piece.
Yeah, it's not bad though. I think it's a nice treat as a one-off thing, and we can get the occasional one-off thing after is a nice idea too. So
yeah,
there you go. Batman Long Halloween Special. Nice trip down memory lane. If nothing revolutionary in and of itself. So, Detective Comics 1044. Mariko Tamaki writing with Dan Mora on the art. So whipping
let's go
back into current continuity. We have Batman and Mayor Nakano trapped in the sewers and the caverns beneath Gotham City.
Yeah, Mora, I'll just say straight out, has so much fun with the shadows in this one. There's one panel in particular that has Nakano on one end, like behind, like this. It is that like the egg sack wall, right?
Yeah.
But it looks like a big like glass, and Batman's on the other, and they're just surrounded by darkness, and it's such a great looking page.
Yeah, no, the art in this is fantastic. The whole theme of this issue is that the water supply in Gotham is pretty shitty, and there's a lot of comparing that to the political system in Gotham, which is pretty shitty. So that's kind of like, and obviously they're down in the sewers, they're down in like the areas where all the worst of the water is going through. So there's a lot of thematic stuff going on there. But a lot of this is Batman trying to find Nakano, and then when he does find them, they're sort of separated by like rubble, and he's trying to get through to him. He's talking to Oracle. The bad guys who took over City Hall are there, and they're making demands. And they're not actually a big concern. We basically just get like a fun few pages of where Batwoman shows up acting like she doesn't know what's going on, and then like puts her mask on and kicks their ass. It's just a fun little sequence.
That's the reds and blacks and browns on that page where she walks in, and they're like, "Who are you?" And then she pulls her mask on. It just, the coloring on that page is great, and then Mora's just
there's a really nice
the way that it flows. Like, it's very cinematic.
Yeah, there's a really nice attention to like color choice in a lot of these pages. Like early on, the second page is at the morgue, and it's just the like they're talking about the parasitic infection, and like they're moving like the bodies around and stuff. And there's a panel at the bottom, or a couple of panels that show that there's a couple of the egg sacs and some blood around the caster, around the wheel, and it's very notable to me in that page that there's no red of any kind, and except for that, so it really sticks out.
No, it's very blue-gray drab, and then you get to the bottom of the page, and the red sticks out instantly.
And then the next page is the same thing. You get the egg sacs, and everything else is all blacks and muted grays, and maybe some very, very muted greens.
I was getting Aliens vibes from this.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Just with the darkness and the egg sacs and all of that stuff. But no, it's just, man, Mora and Tamaki. This is a match made in heaven.
So yeah, the egg sacs obviously begin to hatch. It's where Batman's on the other side of the rubble. So he's talking to Nakano. They're hearing each other. He's trying to tell Nakano to trust them. And Nakano's like, this thing's hatched, and the little monsters, the parasites from Vile, start coming for him. And he's able to sort of fend off one of them and like sort of smash, because it gets into his hand and he smashes it with something. And they keep debating about like trusting Batman, Nakano's attitude towards him. That debate kind of rings on, but then more of the egg sacs start to hatch, and we get more to the horror movie stuff that this has got going. So this is another good issue actually for Halloween week.
Yeah, for sure. I thought that one. This was the first thing I read this week, and I was like, "Oh man, we're starting off strong here with Halloween week." So, but yeah, just when they're crawling all over them, and like they're Scorpion-esque, like, so it's just, there's this deep innate sense that it's off-putting to see them crawl on Nakano. And just the whole trust me. And he says, the human bodies have survived shocks at more than 10 amps. This is considerably more. And it's just like, oh, Bruce is really taking a gamble with the mayor here.
Oh well, yeah, for context for there, that's when his
Yeah.
plan is to electrocute him to kill all the parasites.
Yeah.
To
get him off.
Yeah, and we actually end with not knowing if he's because he's applying CPR at the end of the issue. We don't actually get to see if he succeeds or not. But there's a lot of stuff before that with in the art with like all the crawlies crawling all over him and him splashing about in the water. You mentioned the shadows. There's a couple of panels where he's like before the hatch completely, where he's shining the light from his phone onto it, and it's just like darkness around him. But there's just this sort of triangle of light and then the red pyramid of eggs. Like all of it looks really spooky, atmospheric. Like all this is good stuff, and the debate in the middle of Batman trying to say to him, "Look, you've been in your position long enough now that it's not this black and white thing. That ultimately, like, you don't really trust the magistrate, and you can't just assume that the vigilantes of Gotham aren't needed. Like, it's way more complicated than that. And even if you're not willing to admit it, you're kind of starting to believe it. You're starting to see it. But like you say, he electrocutes Nakano to kill all the parasites, and he's trying to give CPR at the end of the issue, pounding on his chest, and that's kind of the cliffhanger. Is he going to wake back up? As we see some of these bugs being washed out of the drains of the streets of Gotham. So.
All kind of icky.
Oh yeah.
You're just like, who still lives in Gotham, right? Like.
It's a great question. People who can't afford to move somewhere else. That's the only real explanation.
I remember listening to a thing a long time ago where they talk about like Gotham must have like a great like indie band scene because the rent's super cheap. So you have all these indie bands flocking to Gotham to record their first album because it's it's a big city but it's affordable, and that always cracked me up.
Yeah.
So
the page where Batman says "Trust me," I want to talk about the emotion in that page. I mean, all of this stuff where the parasites are crawling all over him. It's all these angular panels that are distorted and kind of. It really gives you this sense of motion and the splashing around. But that page in particular, the background of the page is a full page sort of panel of Nakano screaming please as all the crawlies are going all over him. But the other two panels in the page, the panel where Batman says "Trust me" is this angular panel that's very vertical, and it matches kind of the shape of him at the time because he's on the grapple wire and he sort of came down and he says "Trust me." And then the panel at the bottom, which is almost a diamond shape, is him firing the electric gun or whatever you want to call it. A taser, I guess is the the word that people would use.
That's what I was going to say.
But like just the motion of this and the way those angular panels really give you this sense of him just sort of like zipping down and then like sort of having a badass one-liner saying "Trust me" right before he fires this off. Like there's a good sense of motion to everything. So yeah, but basically what I'm trying to say is Mora is killing it. Not just in terms of like detail and animation, but also in the serialized nature of it as well.
Right. Yeah, his layouts are fantastic. But yeah, just it says it could kill him and me, so he pulls himself up out of the water. And so he says, "Trust me." And it's almost like Batman's also talking to himself. Like he has to trust himself to know this is right, Because imagine this goes wrong and it looks like Batman killed the mayor, So, like...
yeah, it would not look good, would it? It would just add to the narrative, as you will. Yeah. So, but that was the main story. I had a good fun time with it. I don't know if it's up to the caliber of when it's not having to like sort of like not do anything too big because Fear State's going on. But as tie-ins go, this was an enjoyable little spooky, creepy monster issue.
I like that it's keeping the Vile stuff going.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that we're not already just moving on to something else, and we're not focusing on Nero 19. Who are the people that took over the mayor's office.
Yeah,
that we're still doing.
That's like an aside that that's what putting Nakano in this situation, but that's dealt with quickly, and it's just a sort of fun, almost like a joke scene where they just jump to Batwoman like instantly.
Yeah.
So, fun stuff. What are you giving the main story of Detective?
I'm gonna this an 8.5.
I think I'm inclined to agree with that. It was really good stuff. The backup story is a new story, multi-part story by Stephanie Phillips writing. And David Lapham on the art, and this is about the building of Arkham Tower in Gotham,
and Arkham Asylum.
Well, yeah, and the
it talks about-
flashback, yeah.
Yeah, how just naming something Arkham spreads this curse that's been there from the beginning. Which I complain about Batman stuff a lot, but I love the history of Gotham. Like, there's just something about it that, you know, that Metropolis kind of doesn't have. Like, they kind of touched on it in the Jimmy Olsen book, but just it's so much more fleshed out in the Bat books that I'm a sucker for it. And so I almost skipped it just because I was like, it's a backup. I have other things to read, but I'm glad I ended up reading it because it's pretty decent.
Yeah, I wasn't sure what to think the first couple of pages, because the first couple of pages, it's a flashback to like the foreman when they were first building Arkham Asylum long ago, went nuts and basically killed. It was basically he basically went Jack Torrance on his crew.
Yeah, I was gonna say The Shining.
That's effectively what happened.
Huh?
But then we cut to present day, and we've got this new Arkham Tower, which is it's actually Hugo Strange's tower that's been renovated into a new skyscraper version of Arkham, which is just a wonderful idea for everyone except the people in Gotham.
Yeah.
As a reader, though, it's a wonderful idea. I can't wait for the Arkham Tower nonsense to happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, you got Nakano trying to justify this to the press, who are like, "Are you insane? Like, nothing good comes from Arkham. It's just a terrible idea." There's a crazy old man saying, "You're all mad. This is not going to work." And sure enough, we get some nighttime stuff at the tower, at the construction of it, where there's workmen who are, creeping about in the dark. And sure enough, I don't know if it's the foreman necessarily, but one of the workers is like banging his head against the wall, which matches what the foreman in the flashback was doing earlier. And sure enough, he turns around and attacks him. But of course, unlike the flashback, we have a Batman to jump in, and that's actually the cliffhanger. So we don't really get any much further. But to be honest, I actually think the amount this sets up in this, 8-10 pages, whatever it is the right amount where it felt like it wasn't just giving me nothing. But I'm glad it didn't try to go further. I think if it tried to go further beyond this point, it would have felt rushed. So
yeah, for sure. It's well paced, because I do because you have Bruce listening in to Nakano talk about this, because he wants to be like, no, we're not putting Arkham Tower in. He wants to try to talk him out of it. So there's a lot there that, I like when we see Bruce trying to move as Bruce Wayne, not just as Batman. Nakano just kind of shrugs him off. And how Nakano says he's not going to budge on this. And we even get a harbinger, like in a typical horror movie, where there's this, crazy, what looks like homeless person.
It's got a death curse.
Yeah, the mayor, the reporters, the entire city, you're all mad. You're doomed. That's all I could think of.
This is definitely fitting into the horror vibe that the book generally has right now, as this backup story.
So, but yeah, so just the whole idea of the whole name Arkham being cursed and what that means for the city, I really like that. And then when we get to the whatever's wrong with the foreman or whatever's causing this, like you said, now we have a Batman to go off of. And Labham's art here really works because it's in the daytime, it feels very, just like regular. I don't say that's not house style, but it looks as it should. But then when we get to the parts with, in the dark, it becomes a Batman book. And when Batman shows up at the end, it's very pulpy, kind of. Like, Batman's very square in here. And just the way that it plays with the light there. I'm very excited to see where this goes. It might be the first thing I've read from Stephanie Phillips that I went, yeah, okay.
Yeah,
like,
this is
I'm here for this.
Yeah, this is my favorite thing from her as well, I think, at this point. That last page, Batman jumping through the window as the crazy workers strangling the other guy. There's a lot of smart things with the lighting on that page. So the bottom half of the page is lit effectively by the torch that one of them dropped. Right. So they've got this kind of harsh light right in their face, almost like someone's just dropped a flashlight right next to them.
Right.
But then in the top half of the page, you have Batman coming through the window, and he's lit by the sort of the lower, more ambient night light of the city, and it's just this
the orange
soft
glow of Gotham.
Yeah, it's just a soft glow. So there's a nice contrast between the two halves of the page and how each part of it's lit. It's not, I talk a lot about comic art and panels and framing and compare it to movies a lot when I'm talking about composition or the flow or even the editing and how that kind of like, how the layout of panels almost mimics the editing of something. Very rarely do I talk about lighting, at least in the way where I'm talking about it like as if there's multiple light sources in one panel. I very rarely talk about comic art that way, so I'm impressed that I'm making this point in the way that I am. But it really stuck out to me. Yeah, no, it's a good horror vibe of a story. Bringing up Amadeus Arkham, also going crazy as well. The idea that there's no good that can come from that name. All of that is just building some spooky times, and it does kind of. And a lot of the backups in this book, especially, have been used to build things that are going to be used either, if not their own series, but certainly as something later. So I think Arkham Tower is definitely going to be a big feature, possibly in that 10-part story that they're about to do in this.
Yeah.
If not something else. Me. But I don't think Arkham Tower is going to be like, just we get to the end of this backup series and it's done. Like, I feel like that Arkham Tower has been set up here for its inclusion in something else. And we're going to have a fun horror Shining style thing going on in the meantime for funds. So I had a good time with this. What are you rating the backup?
I'm going to the backup an 8.
I would concur with that. I think it was a really good little horror story, and I think I've enjoyed a lot of the backups in this book. I think this is one that's notable in that I really enjoyed this on its own and its own merits. Not as like a build to something, just as a good horror story on its own. I was kind of into it. So, neat. All right. DC versus Vampires issue 1, James Tynion the 4th and Matthew Rosenberg writing with Otto Schmidt on art. So keeping the Halloween horror vibes going here.
Welcome back to DC, Otto.
Yes, welcome back.
Been sorely missed.
Yeah, so this story revolves around iVampire, who comes in
Andrew Bennett
looking like a character of like a post-apocalyptic western with his hat, shades, coat, and like wrapped up in bandages because he's out in the sunlight, so he's keeping himself covered up. And he's going towards the Hall of Justice, and this issue is him telling Hal Jordan what he's discovered and what's happened to him, and the threat that the vampires have on the DC universe. Basically, it was his arch nemesis, his ex-lover.
His ex-girlfriend, who's the queen. Did you ever read iVampire?
No.
Okay, so it was pretty good. One of my friends loaned me the first trade. I always wanted to finish it. I only made it like a little bit past that first trade. But it was really interesting because it kind of like we see with Swamp Thing right now, it's very much part of the DC universe, but taking its place in a corner. But it had a really well built-in mythology with Andrew Bennett and his ex, who's like this queen of the vampires. But and from what I remember, it was very enjoyable. I'm sure this week in the New 52 we'll cover it pretty soon. This is I think it was a launch title on the New 52. I'm not too sure, but
I love how you don't know the title of that show.
No, I'm sorry. But give me the title, Pete.
Not So New 52 is the title of that show.
Not So New 52.
There you go.
That's much better than what I said. So,
yes.
But I like what it builds on here. That basically she's been keeping a war brewing. Like he doesn't like her because they stand at opposite poles, but she's the one being that has kept the vampires from overrunning the rest of the DCU.
Yeah, so the premise of this is that she's died, and as a result, the vampires have ran wild, and they've killed the Legion of Doom. Some of them are dead, some of them have been turned into vampires, but Bennett finds them. He gets into the location, he sees plans for basically them taking over the world, and he finds a living Lex Luthor who's lost an arm, and he's on his last legs, he's dying, and he wants him to deliver a message to the Justice League, and he gives him a vial of his own blood, and basically says, let them know that I'm the one who saved the world. Like, me giving you this is saving the world, because I'm Lex freaking Luthor, damn it.
It's so Lex Luthor, right?
It's very Lex Luthor, it's delightful. But then we get Vampire, Scarecrow, and Grodd, and Vampire Riddler. Although Vampire Riddler does not last long, because what we find out here is that Lexi's blood is lethal to vampires. So I'm sure there's a reason for that. I'm sure he concocted something that's in his system, whatever it may be.
Yeah. So part of handing over his blood to Bennett was that he has to kill him because they won't turn him, right? And we don't know why exactly. And Andrew Bennett goes to release his fangs. He goes, no, like that, you have to use your hands. So right there, it's kind of built in, like, oh, okay, there's something up with the blood. And then as we see Andrew Bennett stab Vampire Riddler in the eye and him just drop, you're like, oh, okay. So yeah, definitely Lex did something to himself to keep him from being able to be turned.
Yeah. So we get this kind of montage of Bennett kind of wandering, trying not to be followed, going out in the daytime, and he comes to the Hall of Justice. But the twist here is that Hal Jordan's already a vampire, and one of the Wonder Twins, he sort of grabs him and kills him by making a Green Lantern construct blender and blending Zan down into a drink and drinks him, and kills Andrew Bennett.
He says it's a little watery, which, if you know about Zan's power, he takes the form of water.
Yes,
so that was good line. Rosenberg or Tynion, whoever wrote that line, perfect.
So you know, it's setting up that there's already people who have been turned, the vampires are taking over. But notably, during all of this, he never actually brings up or gives Hal the vial of blood. He never gives him that. And it kind of sets up that maybe went somewhere else. And the final scene of the issue is that this vial of blood and a letter was dropped off for Batman, which actually makes way more sense that this is kind of what the first port of call was, is that Batman's the one who might be able to sort of mobilize and do something with this information. So
what got me is when Bennett first shows up there, right? He's kind of bursting into flames in the sunlight, and Hal comes in and brings him in with Zan, and he mentions that the Justice League's off-world. And then there's a slip where Zan had said, like, oh no, they're here. And that's the first tell that Hal's being a little underhanded.
There's also a tease during the montage of Bennett being sort of on the run. You see Green Arrow kind of standing in the background as if he's one of the people hunting him. And there's also a line earlier in the issue where one of the villains almost says green something, but you don't get to see what he's going to say. So it's almost setting you up thinking that Green Arrow's a vampire, but what he was actually going to say is Green Lantern. And here, sure enough, Hal's the one who's already been turned into a vampire here. So it's delightfully vicious the way he just like burns iVampire, and then the way he blends Zan, like all of it's just delightfully viciously sinister. And he's got, unlike a lot of vampire stuff, unlike a zombie, which obviously we've seen in Deceased and other things, vampires get to have a personality, they get to have attitude, and Hal has that the entire time as he's just gleefully murdering everyone. And then of course Aquaman shows up and he just starts to play cool. He's like, oh no, I was just doing things, nothing serious.
Is it really dusty in here? After Hal's just burned a vampire. That's another fun line. But yeah. No, it's seeing. So we don't get to see full Green Arrow, but just knowing that we're gonna get to see Schmidt's Green Arrow again, I'm very excited. It's all on the art.
Honestly, the cover kind of gives away that he's probably not a vampire, at least to start with, because. And it's all just a red herring for the fact that they were setting up Green Lantern to be the one who's already a villain. But I mean, it's funny because obviously this is out of continuity, but you kind of get the feeling that it's set in recent continuity. Obviously Alfred's alive, so that's a big thing. But other than that, the fact that the Wonder Twins are in the Hall of Justice still feels like, oh, that's recent kind of vibes. Like it feels like it's set. Obviously not in continuity, but it's sort of branching out from a specific part of continuity.
Right. So, but yeah, no, and the art, I mean, it's bathed in red for the Legion of Doom sequences, which I think works out really well.
All of Bennett's like story as he tells them what's going on is all bathed in this red watercolor kind of vibe.
Looks really, really nice, and it adds to that whole vampire aspect. And yeah, I mean, I can't say enough other good things. I mean, the Hal Jordan twist was, I thought, really nice. But when you think about it, it's kind of, I don't know, it's not really telegraphed, but there are breadcrumbs there.
The second he says, "If you told anyone else about this," I'm like, "Okay, he's about to be villain."
Yep. Yeah, and that's right before he, shows his fangs, right? Like,
yeah.
But yeah, so just him being the first Justice League, as far as we know, vampire in the Justice League. We'll see how that works, and how are vampires in the DCU? Like, can they affect Wonder Woman and Superman? Right? Because are they magical beings? Are they biological? I don't remember from iVampire, but it seems like whatever Lex did to his blood cues me in, like, maybe it's a little bit more biological.
I feel like this will come up. Like, they're going to address this. There's no way they're not. I also like
that. No, I know that. I'm just, after this first issue, these are the questions that I had. How's it going forward? Because on that plan to take over the world, they have Superman listed. They have Shazam. But are those people that are threats to them, or are these people they want to turn? I don't know. Let me go back to that page that they have. Superman, Constantine, Wonder Woman, Swamp Thing, Shazam, Zatanna, someone called Majestic, Vandal Savage, Ra's al Ghul, and Joker on the bottom. And they're also talking about what looks like making a satellite into a shield to plunge the world into forever darkness.
Yeah, which actually, probably one of my favorite little details about this is that Green Lantern can go out in daylight because his ring can protect him from the sunlight. I thought that was a nice little touch. Because
and that's how he burns Bennett alive, right? Where he says that they're, the fact that his ring is a form of light, it allows him to have the ability of all forms of light. So the UV light that he can filter out, he can also create, and that's how he burns Bennett to death in the Hall of Justice.
Yeah, but it's also kind of your. It also adds to the red herring because you see Hal out in the sun. Not that you're suspecting him to start with, because you wouldn't have any reason to. But if the thought does occur to you, what if he's already a vampire? You might discount it by going, "Oh, but he was out in the sunlight." So,
and Hal can't catch a break in these.
Admittedly, I do think that part of this is because they knew they had to answer this issue. Because if they didn't actually explain how he was out in the daylight, we'd all be sitting going, "Well, he was out in daylight."
Yeah.
We'd all be asking the question. I mean, we'd all probably assume it was the ring that protected him, but they kind of had to do it in this issue. It felt like a necessity, but at least they had fun with it by immediately using it to kill Bennett afterwards. Because I think that's what made it feel okay. Had it just been the explanation and nothing else, it would have felt a bit clunky, I think, because it'd be like, "Oh, we had to explain this because otherwise everyone's going to ask."
Yeah, no, and I like it because it makes him seem that much more vicious, too. Like the fact that he seems to be enjoying it as he's doing it. But I say, Hal can't catch a break between this and Deceased, man. He was zombified, and now he's vampified. So I guess he's just fun to mess with.
Yeah. No, it's a fun time. I'm enjoying the characterization. I'm not going to lie though. I'm kind of glad that Bennett was killed off in this first issue. I was a little bit worried early on that he was going to be the main character because he's a vampire. I know what people like out Vampire. I never read it, but I really didn't have any interest in reading that 12-issue story with Bennett at the center of it.
No, I don't mind. He's a member of that Justice League Dark too. Back during the New 52. He's a good character. I mean, he's basically Angel at this point. At that point,
Okay.
So,
but
yeah,
I'm cool with him being dead, so we can focus on more interesting characters. So, that's a fun time. Art's really good. Schmidt, let me say, the bathed in red gives it this apocalyptic feel for a large portion of the issue. But mostly it feels like they're just having fun with a wacky concept, in the same way that Deceased kind of did as well. Now, where this gets to have more fun than Deceased potentially, because it's the vampires have attitude. What will be a true test is if it can hit the emotional beats that Deceased also did, because so far I wouldn't say this is, and it's not as a fault, because there's nothing in this issue that should have been trying to hit an emotional beat. But I'll be very curious to see going forward into future issues if it can hit those things, like, because everything in Deceased with like certain characters dying, so then we had their sons, or we had their loved ones like try to continue the legacy or stuff. There was a lot of good or just reactions to like other characters dying and things like that. It'll be interesting to see how this deals with that going forward. So
Yeah.
I'm curious. But all right, what are you giving DC versus Vampires issue 1?
This is a 9. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm just gonna go with a straight 8. Had a lot of fun. Looking forward to issue 2. Very easy read as well, might I add. So cool stuff. Checkmate issue 5. Brian Michael Bendis with Alex Maleev. Take it away, Matt.
I enjoy the art. I say that every time. This is the penultimate issue, and it ends up with Checkmate taking out the forces of Leviathan that when their headquarters got teleported. So a lot of the first couple pages are a fight scene. And the headquarters, their secret church, gets crumbled. And Robin starts questioning Mr. King. He says, "Do you do anything?" He says, "I run Checkmate." He's like, "Yeah, but do you anything?" And he tells him, "Well, boy wonder I keep us in the game, so watch this." And then he ends up teleporting them to the basement of the Hall of Justice, into the where the Justice League Dark's kind of headquarters is. So it's not really clear like what exactly this King guy does. It's still just kind of all in these shadows. But these portals start to become more of a plot device than anything. And then we get more of Lois and her secret brother, which I'm still not a fan of. She realizes that he is the snowman's ticket, so whatever that's still supposed to mean. And Mark Shaw is putting one of his Leviathan agents in undercover to be a Hall of Justice intern, and it's her job to come in and, I guess, figure out the portals. But Checkmate, I don't know if they realize this, but they put Damien in that same group with the interns. So as they're going through, Checkmate's down, keeping an eye on him, to try to, because they don't realize that Leviathan doesn't realize that they're down in the Hall of Justice right now, because they think that they, got taken care of when they got teleported initially and their headquarters fell apart. And King points out that if Mark Shaw sees them in this building, he'll instantly know, and he won't make his move, because now that they got him, that he's comfortable. Fun moment where Damien says that his name is Timothy Todd, which is a fun, just smashing together. It's the quickest thing he could come up with. And then the lights go out in the Hall of Justice, and it's kind of hinted that Talia is a sleeper agent, and Green Arrow draws his bow on her, and it looks like she fires. And then we go back to Lois and her brother, and Mark Shaw shows up and says that he wants to take care of this himself. I still don't know what the point of this book is, because it all just feels like it's not much of anything. The art's fantastic. I mean, it's moody. All the characters look great. I mean, the way that the panels are structured are great, but like, I still don't know, like, the fact that we have this Leo Lane popping up in Justice League with whatever's going on here, yet he's being introduced here. It's kind of messy. So, like, good on DC for putting it out there, but I don't know eventually what's going on here. It feels like a lost series at this point. So, this one's a little bit more enjoyable just because we get the pieces in place. I still don't know what Shaw wants to do besides trying to get the Batcave and the Hall of Justice and the Justice League satellite. Like, those are all his sources of information that he wants to get. But, like, ultimately his endgame of revealing all secrets, I don't know what that means for DC going forward, if it even means anything. So, I mean, it kind of just feels like a chore to read with really good art. So, I'm going to give it a 5.5.
Oof. That's damning coming from you.
Yeah.
Along with the quote, It feels like a lost series at this point. Series? A lost series at this point. Put that on the poster.
Yeah.
Oh, the comic books
Put
get
that on the
posters,
trade, please.
but yes, the trade.
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Okay.
They try to spin it. They mean it like, oh no, he means it like the TV show. Lots of twists and turns.
No, there's that phase. I remember the movie, but it was that movie where Tom Hardy played twins, where they snuck a 2-star review onto the poster and no one noticed because of the way they laid it out.
That's great. What was that movie called?
Oh, I can't remember.
Yeah, I was really stoked for it, and then one of my friends watched it and was like, "It's not good." Even though he's pretty decent in it, but I feel like that's everything. My neighbor asked me if I had seen Venom yet, and I was like, "No, bud, I'm gonna watch that at home when it's free." Come on.
I'm probably not even going to do that. So
Yeah. Have you not seen the first one?
I saw the first one eventually.
Okay.
Yeah. It was bad.
Yeah. Tom Hardy's in a completely different movie than what the director's directing.
It wasn't even good bad like Connor and others have said it as. It's just bad and mostly just mediocre and shit.
Again, it was fine me renting it from Redbox and watching it on my couch while I was doing laundry, which isn't always the key to a good movie watching experience, but it worked. So yeah, so that's what I feel like with Checkmate putting that on there. That movie's called Legend, by the way. I just remembered. No looking up. It's about the crime twins in London.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Well, yeah. Robin, issue 7, Joshua Williamson writing with Gleb Melnikov on the art. And we have to talk about a new Al Ghul in this issue. We have great-grandmother, was it Ruah Ghul?
Yeah, R-U-H, however we're pronouncing this, because I know it goes back that it is
Ra's Ghul.
Ra's al Ghul, Ra's al Ghul. Is this Ra? I'm calling her mother soul still, just because that's basic. We'll call her great grandmother soul here, because that's who she turns out to be. And man, I love everything Williamson's doing right now. Between this, we'll talk about Deathstroke in a few, but he's just having fun. And I feel like this is what would happen if you gave someone like me permission to tell whatever story I wanted in the DC universe. You end up with something like Robin or Deathstroke Inc. And it's very checking my specific boxes here. So yeah, the revelation that she's his great grandmother, but like, does Roz know she exists? Because he wasn't always Ra's al Ghul, right? Like, that's part of the legend. That's something that he became. But apparently this runs through their family. And yeah.
Yeah, so the issue starts with Respawn, whose identity is heavily teased in this issue. You've got a moment where his mask is almost taken off, but he's like, no, it's not time yet, And I'm like, oh, who is this? Like, who are we going to recognize as this Respawn character? I don't know.
I also love that Damien's like, get a domino mask then, dummy. As if that's going to prevent us from knowing his identity, but it's one of those comic book things that I love, that a simple domino mask can keep your identity secret. But yeah, I just love that part. Yeah,
we see a little bit of what looks like white hair on whoever this is, but certainly no one came to mind. Although Ravager really wants to know who Respawn is. That's what her main goal seems to be.
I'm feeling it's tied to Deathstroke somehow, just based off of the look, right? But I don't know, because none of those kids. You have Grant, and then you have whatever Jericho's name was. I forget his name, and then Rose. But I'm not aware of any other Wilson kids.
I don't think it's one of his kids. So, I don't think that's what it is. If anything, this wouldn't be that exciting, but I suspect it might be someone who, Damien's been with in like one of his Teen Titans rosters or something. I don't know. But they have a fight. He kicks him off the edge of a cliff. Fun stuff in the art, and this is where Mother Soul comes to talk to him about stealing the book. And Damien reveals that he read enough to realize who it is. You're Ruah al Ghul, soul of the demon. So not head of the demon, soul of the demon.
Which goes in with the Mother Soul, right? Like, that whole thing.
Yeah, yeah. And basically, Damien explains that, at least to some extent, that this island is getting stronger because of all the deaths. So all these deaths are effectively sacrifices that are making the island grow more powerful. And it looks like the greenery is getting stronger. It's becoming more lush and lavish as the deaths pile up. And we see like a montage of all the others getting killed around the island. And Damien's like, "Oh, I have to stop this tournament. I have to stop it right now." And we get effectively the semi-finals when Damien gets back. Ravager's like, "Nope, I'm going to fight Connor Hawk." And Flatline's like, "Nope, we're definitely fighting Damien." And Damien's trying to talk her out of it. He does his best to try and speak her down.
He's like, "Just let me win." And she's like, "No, that's not what I came here for. I came here to know death." And she goes to do the heart grab. And I was like, "Oh no, he's not falling for this again."
Not at all. And you get those close-up panels where it's like he knows what she's about to do, and blocks it, snaps her wrist, kind of spins her around, and then kicks her so hard into the wall that she actually does seemingly die. You get the heart rate monitor kind of panels as she's going. I actually really like the art touch here of like when she's lying there dead and Damien's just sort of kneeled down next to her, of just a plain white around them, like no panel, no box, no nothing. It's just this infinite white void. Really nice touch. And then the ghostly hand of Alfred on his shoulder. And this is not her third death. She's not gone for good. But
no.
In fact, I actually really like that someone's heckling Raptor's like, "Hey Raptor, why don't you get back in the tournament?" And he's like, "I've already died twice." I'm not having, because obviously the third death is like you're dead for good in the rules. So but yeah, so yeah, Mother Soul shows up, gloats a little bit, and Damien like reiterates that he's going to stop her. He's going to stop this tournament. But she's like, "Hey, you're in the finals, down to the last two." And he's like, "Wait, Ravager?" And no, Ravager's lying there dead. It's Connor Hawk versus Damien. They run towards each other. Cliffhanger. See you next time for the finals. I
love that the two secret sons of Oliver Queen and Bruce Wayne are the finals of this tournament. Like, it's just great.
I think this issue was one of the best that the book has had, purely just in terms of everything felt really... We had a great action scene at the start, then we had a great, the bombshell of who Mother Soul really is, adding to the Ra's al Ghul lore, and then we get all the fighting that takes place, and Damien having more of a defined purpose now. Now he believes that he has to stop something, so it's more like a hero's journey where he actually does have like a heroic goal in mind now. It's not just like some sort of vague, I'm learning who I am, or I'm wanting to find out what's going on. Now he has there's a villainous thing happening here. He wants to stop it. He might fail, but when he does fail, he's going to presumably have a little team of allies now that he's maybe going to sort of, convince to join his effort from the other competitors.
So we try to read that Teen Titans book where that put him with, like Wallace and Crush from Lobo's daughter, and it always felt kind of hollow, at least to me. Here, it just felt like they kind of built a team around him, and it just feels organic. Like these characters, like Ravager and Connor Hawk and Flatline, they all just feel like they mesh better with Damien. And if that's like the best thing that comes out of this book, like great. Like, I'm still enjoying it. I've always kind of loved Damian Wayne just because he's such a little shit. So the fact here that he's getting to grow properly, I'm a big fan of.
Yeah, no, I felt it. And the characters, because at this point, when this book started, we didn't really know who Respawn. I mean, we might know who it is when he takes the mask off, but we didn't know who Flatline was. But she's already got enough character that I kind of I had fun seeing her again when she popped back up in this issue. Ravager we already liked, obviously, but all of these characters, there's a nice little cast now that I'm kind of invested in the entire group and not just Damien, which is probably as good as a compliment as I can give a book like this. So very neat. I think the death of Flatline towards the end of the issue is handled very well. The emotional realization of Damien and not liking what he's doing, and that being kind of this motivator to stop her, that all this killing is wrong and he's going to stand up for it and say, "No, we're not doing this." it makes you want to root for him for as much of a little shitty as he is. Like his heart is in this right place now, for if nothing else. And sometimes rooting for a character who seemed like more of an antagonist to begin with, when they reach this kind of moment, is some of the most satisfying, rooting that one can do in a story. I don't know. There's something immensely satisfying about it. I guess it's because it's someone who has actually turned over a new leaf to some extent, and you really want to root for the success of that through line. So yeah, and the art stuff's still great. Melnikov's been killing it. All the action scenes flow really well. A lot of good motion, a lot of good a lot of the swooping is flatlining Damien or sort of countering moves, and he's like countering the thing that killed him the last time. All of that is told very well in the art. Yeah, you can see him, you can see him thinking right before he counters something. You can see him thinking about it. You can see him realizing that he has to. So works really well.
Yeah. Well, I want to say too, it's Melnikov and Max Dunbar. I can't tell if Dunbar's just the colorist or if he took over pages, but it's seamless. I couldn't tell if there's a difference in the art. But yeah.
Yeah. No, really good stuff. Robin's been a nice little series so far. What are you giving Robin?
I'm giving this one a 9. I really enjoyed this issue.
Jesus Christ, Matt, with the scores this week.
I hinted on Twitter last night. I'm gonna be a little bit extra because this was a fun week for reading comics, and now we're hitting the stride.
Yeah, it was a really enjoyable week. I'm just a bit more reserved apparently than you are.
Of course, I don't expect. Just wait till I talk about Deathstroke Inc.
I haven't
even reached my final form.
Another solid 8 for me on this one. Really enjoying the progression of Damien and the supporting cast around him. So good stuff. Wonder Woman issue. Sorry, let me correct that. Wonder Girl issue 4. Joelle Jones.
I was like, did I miss another book?
No, Wonder Girl issue 4. So we're back to Yara, and I think I'm going to get something negative out of the way first. I do think the long gaps between issues are hurting my engagement in this, because I'm struggling to remember at times where we were in the last part of the story.
And yeah, so I'll get my negative out too. The story in this is a bit of a mess. The art, fantastic. This issue feels a little bit like filler, and I don't like that.
Well, the funny thing is that I kind of liked it when I realized, okay, this is her training, this is her becoming like a Wonder Woman type fighter, and like learning the lessons, and her trying to like bond with the Pegasus, and it only happening when she was vulnerable, and that's when the Pegasus comes up and engages with her in the rain. That stuff I liked well enough. I do think some of the pages where it's the gold art, where it's effectively a montage, I think those pages do genuinely feel like filler to me, where nothing's really happening. It's just a couple of general narration boxes. But for the most part, there's not really anything worthwhile other than just the passage of time as she's getting better as a fighter. And it tells us outright that the passage of time in Olympus, or wherever she is right now,
is different.
So it's not like time is passing on Earth, which is a bit of a cop-out, just so that we can have her go through all this without it affecting the timeline on Earth. So, sure, whatever.
Right, and that's where I talk about it being a little bit messy, where it doesn't feel like it's informing the story very much, I get that she was this girl that was heading down to Brazil to get in touch with her roots, and now she goes to be Olympus's champion for Hera, and she's doing all this. But the gold art's just doing so much of it, and not that I need to see her train all the time, but it's almost just like an afterthought. It's like Jones is just like, well, I'm gonna throw it into this montage, but then it's just like, well, there's some real cool stuff in here that's just getting skimmed over. Well, I think that's what in this montage.
That's what makes the Pegasus stuff work. Is there's a little start and end to it where she's struggling to gain the respect of the Pegasus, and how she ultimately gets it is a little bit of a story. It's a little bit of a turn, and that's what makes it work, and that's what makes it feel like there's a progression. A lot of the other stuff is just like, here's some generic montage stuff of her training to give you a vibe that's happening. Honestly, my bigger issue with this story is probably the exposition dump afterwards, where the Brazilian Amazon, if that's even the right term, Yeah, when she shows up and sort of explains the story of how Yara's mother didn't go to Themyscira and she didn't go to Egypt, she kind of stayed separate from the other Amazon tribes,
Right.
and she just did her own thing, and it resulted in this birth of a child, and it resulted in this.
Yeah, she met one of the Brazilian river gods, I guess, and that's where Yara comes from. And she built her own tribe of Amazons in the Amazon, and like that's cool. I like seeing the split. It's just, you're right, it's a dump. Like they're just saying, hey,
it's a dump. And then the other problem I had with this is that after we get the expedition dump, the Artemis and Cassie show up, right?
Yeah.
And Cassie gives us some advice and sort of says, hey, like, Hera's trying to turn you into something, make sure that's what you actually want, and consider, think about it before you're just going to accept it. Because she's effectively been given this choice where she's going to drink this elixir and it'll make her an Amazon or part god or something, but she can never go back to being immortal after this, right? And the cliffhanger at the end of the issue is her going to take the sip, but she's not quite done it yet, so we don't know if she might like swerve us at the start of the next issue. Well, but it looks like, but I didn't finish my point, but it looks like she's going to do it. When Cassie and Artemis show up and give her this advice, they just leave. Like, Artemis rambles and just says, oh, this is the girl who everyone's talking about or trying to find. Right. And Cassie gives her this a bit of advice, but they just leave. And I immediately went, wait, why would they try to find her again? Because it feels like it was more than just to give her like a quick bit of advice and leave. It felt more. Right. Well, it felt more pointed than that. I felt like there was like a mission to accomplish, and they just leave her after speaking to her for a minute. It felt weird to me.
Yeah. Well, and also she got to go back down to Earth after her training because she had asked, like, I need to think about this, right? So she goes to Eros and.
Well, that's where she is. That's where she is when she gets the expedition dub. It's where she is when Cassie and Artemis show up to talk to her.
And she's down there talking to Zhao, and and I like this part too, where she talks about like I feel like there's something that I could go do for the greater good, but I also don't want to miss out on my life. So like, what do I do? And he finally he conks out or falls asleep, and that's where the other Amazon shows up from Brazil and stuff. And it just, this is where I talk about it being a mess, because that dump happens, and then the stuff where we've seen Cassie and Artemis tracking her down for what? What's the ultimate point? Were they trying to stop her from going off with arrows?
I feel like I missed something. I feel like I was misremembering what their purpose was, because it felt like they just walked away from her like very quickly, and I'm like, wait, weren't they here for something more specific than this?
And what's Hera's game for this? Like, why does she want?
Like, whatever Hera's trying to like convince her to do, ultimately, like the goal of turning her into her like warrior does feel like malicious. It does feel like she's been lured in, and it's the wrong choice to us, the reader, which is fine. I'm okay with this being like the dangling like bad choice that seems like a noble one to her from her perspective, but we're all going, no, we're all rooting for her to make the choice to stay on Earth and be a hero and save other people and whatever else. But it does feel a little bit poorly defined so far in this issue. And I remember feeling the last couple of issues feeling a little. It's felt a bit muddier storytelling wise the more it's went on. I think issue to issue, and I think part of that might be the delays and the long gaps, but I think part of it is also just in the story writing. And I think the sad part of this is that this is the second book now from Joelle Jones where, I've loved her art, and I started her Catwoman book because it was her, and I felt the same thing in Catwoman where after a few issues I just wasn't as into the story after an arc because it was getting muddier. And I'm feeling sadly the same way, which is a shame because I loved those Future State issues and I loved the start of this. And I think Yara Flor as a character has a lot of appeal. But when Joelle Jones seems to get into the actual meat of the story, it always seems to kind of start to just buckle under the weight of whatever she's trying to do. And I kind of felt it here again as well, where instead of being really excited by the pieces you're setting up, because at its core, you think about it, she's been given this choice to accept this offer from Hera, but it'll mean giving up life on Earth, and it'll mean not being this hero of the people that she feels that she should be, and that should be like for the audience, for the reader, that should be a like oh I really hope she makes the right choice. It's a really simple yes or no. It should feel quite simple, but I feel like this story so far has not made it very clear what all the different like factions want from her, and they're trying to keep it mysterious as to what her existence means to everyone and why they all want to have an influence on her. And because that's not being defined, it's really hard to just get into the choice that she's making. And I don't know, like I feel like there's a more streamlined version of this that feels it should exist.
Right, like it would have been nice for Artemis and Cassie to be like, hey, it's your decision to make, but just be wary of Hera, because traditionally she's not a friend of the Amazons. You know, like, but there's nothing there's nothing like that in there to like inform Yara of this decision. It's almost as if she's just like, oh, I haven't even really got to live in this world. That's what it seems like she's talking to Zhao about, is almost like this, oh, I'm just starting to live. Why do I go and be the servant of Hera? Or do I, just stay down here to have fun? And it's almost kind of like it's very shallow.
I mean, Cassie's advice to her, right? It's like, you've got a lot of eyes on you, and whatever you decide is going to, like, affect a delicate balance. I know you're excited about the big adventure, but, don't forget, don't become blind to the dangers around you. It's still so vague, and I feel like at this point, we need to define some of this. We need to define what some of this danger is and what this choice really is. But we're not getting it yet, and if it's meant to be for mystery reasons, like this is still meant to be mysterious, at a certain point we need to understand enough of it so that there's some weight to the things being made and the choices being made.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, very murky on this issue. Obviously, the art is gorgeous, but like, that's not what I'm here to complain about.
Even though the montages are a bit unfulfilling, they're still pretty to look at.
Oh, the art itself is good. I mean, but
yeah,
ultimately it's like just like excess style over any substance in those pages.
Yeah, and that's why I wish Connor was on here, because we could have a long discussion about Chiron the Centaur, the trainer of heroes. And it was fun to see him pop up. But
I'm sure he went through a box of Kleenex when he was reading those pages.
Gross. All right, we're gonna do ratings.
Yeah, so joy rate Wonder Girl.
I'm gonna give this a 7.
Yeah, I'm going with a 6. Unfortunately, I'm starting to get frustrated with the book. I need some better storytelling and more defined stakes at this point. The mystery so far is not working for me, and I think part of it is that there's two, like, having all these other factions of Amazons, and like even though I was excited to see Cassie at first, like having all these characters looking for her, I think is just adding too much onto it. If this was just like, can she trust Hera or not, and we as a reader suspect she can't because we know Hera, but like if it was just focused on that and it was more of a personal story, that'd be fine. But it's murkying things up a bit too much with too many things, and not defining enough. So 6 out of 10. Art's very good though, so take it as you will. Task Force Z issue 1, Matthew Rosenberg writing with Eddy Barrows on the art. So we have our zombie Suicide Squad, read by Red Hood.
Don't call them zombies though.
I just said read by Red Hood. Led by Red Hood is what I meant to say. So yeah, zombies, they don't like that word. They're trying to avoid that word.
Yeah.
So this gives us an example. There's a Crazy Quilt's being chased by a man bat. Jason shows up. So we get some really nice art here. I thought like all the colours from Crazy Quilt really was a nice like bit of colour versus all the dark, shadowy Gotham rooftop stuff that's going on. But Bane shows up. Jason has to like calm Bane down with a Lazarus candy.
I just want to say, this isn't my kind of book, right? Like, I don't like zombies, and it's Jason Todd led, and I was a little bit hesitant on it. But I'll be damned if Rosenberg's not having, or it seems like he's having the time of his life writing this. Because it just seems like he has full, ability to do whatever he wants here. I mean, again, you just said Jason gives Bane a Lazarus candy to calm him down.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
So, but it's basically to show just how dysfunctional this is and how like both Bane and Man-Bat almost kill like Crazy Quilt when they're supposed to bring him in alive. So But we get like Red Hood like arguing with like the scientist lady, who I think they imply there might be more than one of her. Maybe she's cloned or something. Because later on, when he brings up the conversation he had when he sees her again, she's like, "What are you talking about?" Which makes me think, is there maybe they're just twins? I mean, that's possible. It's just a normal solution. But he also meets this redhead who's like, is she like a psychiatrist or something? Like I wasn't even sure what she was supposed to be, but she's kind of like telling him off for using certain terminology and calling them monsters, and so they're not monsters. Like
they're your teammates.
Yeah, anyone can be rehabilitated, and Jason's being super cynical, and it's when they go to interrogate Crazy Quilt where he says to the other woman who we saw before, because the first time he sees her is when he's getting out of the shower, so he cracks a joke about him having clothes on, and she's like, "Am I supposed to know what the F you're talking about?" And I'm like, "Are you the same person technically? Are you like are you all robots? Are you all clones, or are you just like twins? Like what's going on?"
Yeah.
I feel like something's there to be that going on. So they send in Arkham Knight, zombie Arkham Knight to be precise, to deal with Crazy Quilt. Crazy Quilt's shitting himself. He's refusing to talk. He says he knows nothing, but ultimately does give up some information. And Jason goes back out with the team of Man-Bat, Bane, Bloom, and Arkham Knight, all zombie form. Although Bloom points out that he's not technically dead. He's actually slightly different from the other ones.
Which, again, I was like, I never thought we'd see Mr. Bloom again.
I was not fond of that arc in Batman, so I inherently had kind of a dislike of Bloom just because he was associated with it. I have to admit, though, his insistence of correcting people that he's not dead was cracking me up a little bit in this issue. I was chuckling a little bit. Every time someone mentioned that they were all dead, and he's like, "I'm not dead." Just to point out that I'm not dead.
Point out. And then also when things start going sideways, Jason's yelling for his help towards the end, and he goes like, "I can't help. I have this collar that's dampening my powers. You're gonna have to remove it." And it's kind of like, oh man, is this his game? Because I don't remember what Bloom's powers were exactly. So I'm sure we'll be reminded in the next issue.
Yeah, he bloomed things. Yeah. So, anyway, so this information, when they're tracking down whatever Quilt's involved in, it turns out to be Mr. Freeze and a bunch of cronies, and they're actually dealing in stolen Lazarus liquid, or resin is the exact word they use. So it's like the fact that they're dealing with Lazarus stuff when the Lazarus is what's been used to keep all these zombies alive is obviously very interesting and going to be a big plot point. So, but no, we get a lot of Big R is Task Force Z. Fight Mr. Freeze and all of his cronies. I thought some of the layouts here were really cool, as Freeze is blasting various members with his ice gun. Just some fun stuff. I like that there's like a sort of Lazarus like shoulder dispenser on Man-Bat's shoulder that's obviously giving him more Lazarus juice as he needs it. I thought that was an interesting little touch in the art. But no, I like all this stuff here. Actually, one of the things I want to mention, I think it's this book. I think I glossed over it now that we're later on in the issue. But when Jason's getting out of the shower, there's a moment in the art where they put in some arrows. It's when he's talking to the scientist lady when he's getting out of the shower for the layout. They put in some arrows to show you which way to read the page. And obviously in an ideal world, good comic art shouldn't have to tell you. It should be very natural. But I actually want to compliment it and just appreciate the fact that they did this page and then they looked at it and went, you know what? Let's admit this isn't obvious which way you're supposed to read this to a certain point. So let's just put in the arrows, right? So it's a bit of a crutch, but you know what? I appreciate that they recognize that it might need it, and they just put it in. They swallowed their pride, and they just put in some arrows to help you read it. So I appreciate that. Yeah. So I thought that was worth pointing out. What did you think of all the big fighting towards the end?
No, I mean it's fine. I just want to know, like, so the reading Future State, I had read the one issue of the Tim Drake Future State book where he was brought back with Lazarus resin. So this goes back to that, which I do like. I just want to know how exactly it works, because are we putting these characters back together? Because Freeze's Man-Bat cracks his head off and throws it at a frozen Bane.
Yeah, so he's got he's got a frozen man bat head in his hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like, can it bring them back, or I'm not sure.
I mean, we don't know yet, but I suspect we're going to get Man Bat's head stitched back on next issue.
Yeah, so like, there's just stuff like that, but no, I mean it's good. I like Eddy Barrows. I've been a fan of his art for a while.
I like his freeze. His freeze looks good.
Yeah, he did the Freedom Fighters mini that I read by Venditti. Big fan of that. His art fits this well because he's dealing with, Bane and Man-Bat are very monstrous here. And, everything's kind of over-exaggerated in the best ways. Bloom is very creepy with his proportions.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes Jason stand out that much more because he's kind of like the regular dude on the team of monsters, which I like that's his viewpoint here. So, the art's really working with the storytelling. And Barrows is great at layouts, I think, too. So,
yeah, all the stuff, once the ice fight starts, which is what I'm calling it, like all the layouts as like they're dodging, as Jason's dodging like the ice blast, and then like, there's other characters getting trapped in ice or snow. All that stuff looks great. Nice fluid motion to it all. And then the cliffhanger at the end of the issue is that Freezy's like I don't know, his ice proton pack, what do I call it?
His containment unit.
It blows up, and Jason gets trapped in some ice. And he's lying there, and zombie Arkham Knight is crawling towards him like he's going to eat him. So it's like, oh shit, I'm in an actual like zombie movie moment, and that's kind of it's like a joke cliffhanger almost, basically. Yeah. So I think if you read this issue, you're going to have a good idea if you want to stick around for the rest of it. If you're into the fun that's happening.
I got caught up on the detective. I went back to my Detective Comic issues and read, which I don't know if that was necessary to read. That was almost just kind of like a...
I mean, it depends if they explain why Jason's involved with them at all, but...
right.
I think it's...
But from that story with Deb Donovan, though, he was searching stuff independently on his own, and then she ran into him, and they ended up deciding to work together, if I remember right.
That's right.
So here it seems like they made a trade, and then he's working for the organization because he had gotten into some trouble, which doesn't line up. Either way, I'm sure we'll get the thing. But I went into this a little bit hesitant, going like, I don't know. I ended up really enjoying this issue. So, it's a whole lot of fun. Is this a mini or is this an ongoing?
I think this is technically an ongoing, if I remember right.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to see how long they can keep this going. If they're going to restock it every couple arcs with new undead villains,
I don't suspect it'll last that long, but I mean, you're going to get 12 issues, 18 issues out of it by the time it's done.
So
see how it goes.
And I was talking to a friend about this in another forum, but about like Jason Todd's been effectively rehabbed, at least in my eyes, over the course of the last year and a half. And it's like, hey, if you give good creators time to work on characters, there's no real, we say it all the time. No such thing as a bad character.
I feel like you've said this about Jason Todd every time he's came up in the last 6 months.
And I can't justify going, oh, it's a Jason Todd book, I don't want to read it. Like I have to kind of like, oh, it's Rosenberg writing Jason. Gotta kind of check it out now. So, it's weird to me because he was like, how I felt about Jason Todd is how you feel about Guy Gardner. And now that they're taking my reasons away, and I can't do that anymore, and it's very frustrating.
Oh well. What are you rating Task Force Z issue 1?
I'm gonna give this an 8.
I'm probably just gonna give it a 7. But I dug it. I had fun. And I'm going to read issue 2. I had a good time with it, and I think Rosenberg tends to be a very dependable, just kind of like fun writer, as opposed to someone who writes important stuff, which is like an insult almost. But like it feels like a void in the list of comics that I think is dependable. So cool. Task Force Z issue 1. Deathstroke Inc. issue 2. Joshua Williamson writing with Howard Porter on art. Matt, you read this, so.
Yes, I did.
And you're very enthusiastic about it, by all accounts.
I am very enthusiastic because, again, fun. This is why I like reading comics and stuff like this. Is we get Canary, Deathstroke, in a Batman suit, which looks like the Batman suit from that Endgame story, where Joker Jokerized at least Superman, and that Bruce had this big bat armor that could go into space. I think he gave it to Lois.
Yeah, the one that Lois wore for that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Toyman has been given access to this, or he built a replica one, and that they're going up to investigate this satellite because it has stopped responding to the organization they work for Trust. And they get up there, and it's Cyborg Superman. And he's trying to take control of this satellite and the satellite's power source, which is this very, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, very niche character called the Weird. Are you familiar with the Weird at all?
I can't say I am.
So he looks like a ninja. He has a wonky eye, wears this red hood with a black suit. He had popped up post Infinite Crisis in the Rand Thanagar books, but essentially he's a living energy being. And here the satellite and Cyborg Superman are using him as an energy source. So Deathstroke and Canary are up there to kind of stop Cyborg Superman and rescue this crew. And they get up there and they're fighting Cyborg Superman, and then it's revealed that it's not just a robotic suit of armor, but Hero, the toy man, had gone along because he's always wanted to go to space. And this is where we get the title, which is called I Hate Space. Deathstroke goes, oh, that's good, kid. I hate space. A lot of fun action throughout, and Canary is like, this sucks. I can't use my scream because they're up in space and sound doesn't travel. And Hero realizes that Cyborg Superman really isn't a being, right? He's a living techno organism that downloads his consciousness into machines. So he's like, well, I can hack that. So over the course of the issue, while they're fighting all of his minions that he's bringing to life and trying to free the Weird, he ends up hacking. Hero hacks Cyborg Superman and shuts him down from the inside, which then lets the Weird go, which as Deathstroke goes to rescue him, he gets this like weird vision of a bunch of things that are going on right now in the DC universe, which is wild. And so we got what looks like War World. We have like Swamp Thing fighting Parasite. It looks like the New Gods. There's Checkmate there. You have the dark side. You have Darkstar, that energy vampire you talked about with Flash last week.
Oh yeah.
We got young John Kent meeting the Flash from Superman last
Colin
week.
Robinson, of course, yes.
What?
You said energy vampire, right?
Yes.
Colin Robinson.
We got Diana and all the fates from that story. I'm looking here. We got the Justice Society. We got who else? I got to zoom in here. Some of the we got the Yellow Lanterns. We got I think that's about it. More New Gods and Dark Side. And the Weird says thanks because he's freaking, and then he blips out of existence. And then Deathstroke goes back into, and they find out that the satellite was Trust to begin with, and they weren't told that when they were sent there, and that it was putting out this message that says "Stay away, Earth is ours," which then leads to the one lady who was their contact last time. I forget her name. Basically, that they need them to return all this data that they recovered, and that they have another mission for them. And you have to go track down the dangerous criminal named Barbara Minerva. And you know who that is, right?
I'll be honest, Matt, I wasn't really listening.
Oh,
what are you saying?
They have to track down the dangerous criminal Barbara Minerva.
Oh, right, Cheetah. Yes, that's Cheetah Wonder Woman. That
Yeah,
character.
and so Cheetah, Trust believes that they need to bring her in for her crimes with the Legion of Doom.
Wait, is this why you're so excited about this issue? Because Cheetah ended up...
No, well, I'm excited for all the continuity stuff that Williamson's bringing in, and Deathstroke and Canary in space taking out androids, and it's just right. But so Deathstroke goes, that's fine, we'll find her. She goes, no, we know where she is, but getting there is going to be the real challenge. And you turn the page, and Cheetah's holed up in this castle that looks like it's in this rainforest. It's up on a ledge, and there's a rope bridge, and there's waterfalls coming from it, and she is surrounded by like legions of cat people. And it goes into the castle. They're all chanting "Hail Queen Cheetah," and it looks like she's in Wonder Woman's armor, and she is sitting on a throne. And so it says, "Next, long live Queen Cheetah, aka Journey to Cheetara." And yeah, man, this is just Williamson having tons of fun. My only main drawback is a lot of the art is done in 2-page spreads. I mean, but there's a lot of panels, so I don't feel like we're losing anything. But the majority of this book is in double-page spreads. But still looks great.
So you mean 2-page layouts then, rather than spreads?
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
2-page layouts. I'm sorry. But the way that Porter divides it up, you don't feel like you're losing anything because they're not big splash pages, but they're big, almost like widescreen, almost epic kind of storytelling. So you don't feel like you're getting short shrifted anything either. I mean, you get a sequence of when Deathstroke goes to fight Cyborg Superman while they're being hacked, while Cyborg Superman's being hacked. It looks like he has this double-bladed lightsaber, and it's just like, why not? Like, he's up in space, and just the Howard Porter not doing flash art is something I didn't think I was gonna really enjoy, but just here he's just having fun with the spacesuit designs, the satellite that they're on, Cyborg Superman himself constantly like changing shape. Like there's this one page down on the bottom, or a panel at the bottom, where he's reaching into the computer, and the closer he gets to the right side of the screen, the green ones and zeros start coming up. So it's like he's tapping into the digital interface side of things. And yeah, it's a really fun book. It's something like in theory I was ready for, with like, oh yeah, Williamson doing Deathstroke, and then Black Canary's a co-lead, and then Toyman's here now, because the title page on this one, it says Deathstroke and Black Canary and Toyman in I Hate Space. So each issue almost feels like not standalone per se, but it's, each one feels like this is the space issue. The last one was the introduction where they fought those goons, which I'm having a hard time remember because it's been a month.
Well, it was Hive. It was Hive. I don't know.
It was Hive. Thank you, with the creepy bee people and the honey.
Yes,
that's right. Yes. So, it's just a fun book. I do recommend it. Like, it's like, sure, it's not the most necessary. That said, Williamson throwing in the kind of threads that seem important to the future of DC, where things seem to be headed, and tying Swamp Thing in, because like I said earlier, Swamp Thing's kind of been in its own little like group. Like, yeah, we've had Suicide Squad show up, but it's kind of not connected to the rest of the DC. Here, whatever the Weird saw, or Deathstroke saw through the Weird, it's all there. The Justice League Incarnate stuff as well. Yeah, I'm excited. So I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Whoa, that's a big scores coming from Matt this week.
Yep.
All right, cool. So that'll take us on to well, it's the last new book actually. So that'll take us on to my Patreon book for the week. So every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, one of the higher tiers, you can make myself or Connor read a book once per month, and I am reading American Vampire: Survival of the Fittest, issue 3. So I had 2 vampire books to read today. So I'm all vamped out, for sure.
Yep.
So this is the story of Cash and Felicia going and infiltrating Nazi Germany to find this scientist who may have a cure for vampirism. The cliffhanger of the last issue was that they go to this presentation and the Nazis have an entire squadron of vampires, and it almost played the cliffhanger like, oh, that's it, they're screwed. But sure enough, like they keep the charade up and they sit down for the presentation, and there's a lot of talk from the commandant here to talks about why they're working with vampires, because isn't this kind of against the whole Aryan race thing? Vampires kind of aren't the purest.
Right?
But it basically says, well, it turns out that these main vampires, the main sort of the Carpathian race, they're the main one, kind of like how we're the main human race, and they hate all the other races of vampires. So we have a lot of similarities in a lot of ways. So we're kind of working together. But more than anything, they have a lot of money, and they're paying us a lot of money. So we're willing to work with them. Plus, also,
go ahead.
I was going to say, and also it turns out that using vampires in combat situations is very effective because they're very vicious and kill a lot of things very easily.
Yeah. So I was going to ask, since you're reading this all fresh, is this the first time that it hints that other monsters are just other forms of vampires? Like it's like a virus that mutated?
Kind of. I don't know if it necessarily implies that all types of monsters are vampires, but this is the one where the Doctor goes into this like speech about how certain vampires have different weaknesses, but in certain vampires are only like sunlight affects the main type of vampire, but if you go further back to ancient types of vampire, only one actual, like only ultraviolet C, for example, affects this one type of vampire. Whereas, you know, and we know the American vampire is fine to go out in sunlight because Pearl and Skinner can go out in sunlight. Their weakness is gold, and
gold, not silver.
Yes, and also you say that as if silver is meant to be a normal vampire weakness. I disagree with that.
No, it is. No. Fun fact for you, as I've been listening to different Halloween themed podcasts, it wasn't until the movies of the 1930s that silver was the weakness for werewolves, right? They needed something. Silver has always been more associated with vampires through different folklores because silver tended to have a healing property. Like there's a form of silver that they use in surgery because it's antibacterial and antiviral, antifungal, right? And like the reason that vampires can't see themselves in mirrors is because traditionally mirrors were lined with silver, so they couldn't reflect. So yes, so traditionally when you come to vampire lore, silver is the weakness, not just sunlight and wood stakes. So there, come on, man.
Well, all my response to that, Matt, is simply that I could not give a shit. I grew up with tons of movies, tons of TV shows that taught me that silver was a werewolf weakness and not a vampire one.
Well, they were wrong. So
I don't care. I don't like it. I do not like silver being a weakness of vampires. I hate it. It's weird.
Well, take that up. Take that up with 18th century Romanian folklore.
I don't have to. I'm happy to forget. Yeah. You know, and apparently most people are happy to forget that was ever a thing, and we can move on with decent rules.
I'm taking this to Twitter.
Well, one of the first things I didn't like about those Blade movies is that silver was the weakness. I didn't like it. That's werewolves.
That's because it's traditional vampire folklore, Pete. They didn't just pull it out of their butts.
I don't care about traditional vampire folklore. I care about it's like, this is the thing. Every time there's a vampire movie or a vampire story, you always have to sort of like, okay, what are the rules for vampires in this? There's like a general set that we expect, but not all of them always are true. Like even in the original Dracula book, Dracula can walk out in sunlight. It doesn't actually kill him. Yeah. You know, right. some versions of I just watched Jacob's Wife the other night, and the invitation thing wasn't a rule. They could just walk in anywhere they wanted. That was fine. So you have to, with every version of vampires, you have to sort of like wait and see what their rules in their universe for vampires are. Basically what I'm saying is that I prefer when the silver bollocks is not used. So that said, though, in the context of American Vampire, given that we're dealing with this idea that every species of vampire has a different set of weaknesses, I'll accept that one of them in this has probably got a weakness of silver, whereas the American Vampire has a weakness of gold. But the way
I also like what that says about American culture, you know, versus other culture, right? Like gold's a weakness of ours as a society,
as a filthy capitalist society.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. So yes. Keep. You know what? Vampires have got enough weaknesses. We got sunlight. We got wooden stakes. We got garlic. We got the invitation rule. We got all this stuff, right? We got crosses even, right? Those burning. Vampires have enough. Werewolves can keep the silver weakness in general.
Yeah. I mean, the one good part of that argument is Monster Squad, is that there's only one way to kill a werewolf. You know, because you can't kick them in the nards and just defeat them. Or I don't want to spoil Monster Squad for people that haven't seen it, but they prove to you that it's the silver that's the main weakness. By the way, did you ever realize who the actor that played the werewolf was in Monster Squad?
Oh, no. What is it?
Okay. It's Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. John Grease, who's also been in other things. He was on Lost. He was one of the Dharma people. But yeah, watching Monster Squad back at the beginning of the month, I was like, oh man, I never realized this.
I'm going to know more for that because I only saw Napoleon Dynamite once and hated it, so I'm not going to remember anyone from Napoleon Dynamite.
Uncle Rico's fantastic. He can throw that football over the mountain.
You can throw Napoleon Dynamite in the same trash fire that the silver can hurt vampires rule goes in, quite frankly. So I'll hear nothing else to it. Thank you very much. Look, we all have our preferred rules for vampires and zombies, and I like slow zombies. I don't think they should be running around generally. I don't hate every example of them running around, but they should be slow. They're zombies. That's just how I feel on the matter. So sometimes when it feels like they try to do other rules and stuff, it's just kind of like, we want ours to feel different from other stories. Not that I'm saying that about American Vampire, because American Vampire's whole concept is that there's all these other species of vampire, and they all have their own set of rules, and that's okay. That I like, because that is like a larger. It's almost like a weird meta way of trying to explain why there is so many different rules for vampires in different stories. Is that they've all kind of originated from all these different species, and it's kind of like a weird play on that. And
what I like what Snyder does with the story too is that it is a biological drive of vampires, right? It is a virus that mutates. So of course, over time, it's going to get different specialties, and so the American vampire, like you said, can go in the sun. Their weakness is gold. Their venom's even different. When they bite people, it's more like a rattlesnake venom versus whatever the Carpathian vampires is like. So I just remember, and I can't remember if it was in Survival of the Fittest or later, like they say that werewolves are a form of vampirism, but it's been offshooted so much long ago, they're almost their own subspecies. And same with like zombies, because in one of the books they'll end up fighting zombies that are a form of vampire that consumes the body quicker, and they don't just crave just blood, they're full cannibalistic, and it's a fun touch on monster storytelling.
To get back to this issue though, since Matt got us off onto a wild tangent about vampire rules. So they're forced to sit and watch this presentation. They're playing it cool, although Felicia's like ready to fight anyone who looks at her, pretty much. As he's explaining all this stuff with the light, and he pulls out this light gun that he's built, and he has Cash try it out in a couple of caged vampires. Apologies for the Skype noise that just happened there. But I assume Matt will be back any second now. I'll just keep going. So he burns a couple of vampires they've got in cages, and he's all fine to do this until, of course, he has to shoot a vampire in a cage who is the same species of vampire as his son and is very reminiscent of how his son looks, and he can't do it. So Felicia kind of steps in and sort of like covers for him and says, no, give me a turn. But she can see that this is hurting them. She can see that this is an emotionally affecting moment for him. So their bonding's kind of growing. Cash is kind of shaken up at this point. And they go back up to the room. They refuse an offer to go and have some tea or whatever it is. And like shit, like they've got a guard outside who's basically there to keep an eye on them. Even if they're still convincing them that they're these American investors who are going to like join up with the Nazi effort, they won't believe it for long if they don't already suspect that there's some sort of ruse going on. So we have to suit up, we have to sneak out, we have to get the scientist, and we have to go. So we get them sneaking around, rappelling down the side of the castle, going into all the various... There's a lot of good art here. There's a lot of good like creeping around, the shadows in the walls as they're snooping. And they get to the scientist who takes them down into the sort of the caverns of the basement and is like, this is where we can go. And it's a great art here as they're holding up a lantern as they're on this little rowboat. And the cliffhanger at the end of the issue is that there's no way out here, right? This whole cavern system is designed to like confuse people from whoever, like he talks about whoever built this castle before the Nazis. It was all about having like a way to get away from enemies and stuff like that. But it's not. It doesn't actually have an exit. And like, well, why are we down here then? What are we looking for? He's like, well, because the best weapon we've got against the Nazi vampires is down here. And he's like, so the end of the last page is all these statues of ancient vampires who are far more powerful, who the scientist is planning on waking up to cause chaos. So it's a big ending. It's an exciting thing. I think the mood of this one is very good. I mean, it basically boils down into 3 parts, which is them having to play along with all this presentation, then them sneaking around and all that stuff, and then sort of the ending of the big reveal that there's going to be possibly these more like ancient vampires that are powerful and all that stuff. Honestly, it's hard to fault the fun and the pacing of this story. I think like them sitting through this presentation and it's setting up this weapon, which I feel is going to come back into play, and them setting up these different types of vampires, continuing this bond between the characters. You know, one of the things that I talked about the most last issue that I really liked was the moment of vulnerability that they were showing each other when they were getting dressed in the room. And this kind of pays off in that a little bit by having her step in and, you know, cover for him when he gets too emotional at one point. And then again, when they're getting changed into their work clothes, as it were, in the room, it doesn't linger on it as much as it did last issue, but there was kind of a moment where, you know, he is kind of looking at her a little bit as they're getting changed. And it just kind of feels like, you know, they're more of a working unit now at this point, where there is kind of a trust and camaraderie building up beyond just what was there before. So it makes it very easy to root for them. It's building a lot of mythology, as this book has constantly done since like issue 1. So it left me feeling very excited for the next issue. So yeah, 8.5 out of 10 comfortably. Not much more to add.
Nice.
So there you go. American Vampire Survival of the Fittest issue 3. And I will get to my next Patreon book, which is Animal Man, next week. So yeah, that'll take us out of the part of the show though, where we pick our favourites of the week, favourite panel / moment, favourite cover, favourite art, and top 5 books. So I will ask Matt to give me his panel / moment.
I'm gonna go with let's see, man, there's a lot to pick from. I go from vampires, I go from Deathstroke Inc., I go from Robin, Wonder Girl, Detective, and those are all good. But I think I'll go from Robin, and it's when he blocks Flatline from ripping out his heart once more. And then just how that plays out. It's real feel good moment.
Yeah, I mean, I could pick something from Long Halloween. I was actually tempted to land on Robin as well. I was going to go with the actual death moment, when he's like, just through the white background and Alfred puts his hand on his shoulder. I really like that one. So I'm going to go with that, but it's a credit to it that there's a lot of competition this week, and I think Robin's like holding its own against some very stiff competition. So best cover of the week, I kind of came down to, I mean, as this is my parody at this point, but it's either the Behermo variant for Detective or the Matina variant for Vampires. Really not a lot to be said there. I will say that the Long Halloween main cover is a very kind of nostalgic one, but not necessarily the best cover though, I would say. So I think I'll probably go with the Matina variant on Vampire. It's just Batman with vampire fangs and red eyes. You know,
That's good.
Yeah, it's spooky. It fits the mood. So
see, I didn't even look at variants this week, when I should have been. So now I'm watching for time. Oh, that's a good one.
Oh, whenever you're ready, man.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'll go with the Deathstroke Inc. Variant. I think it's Matina. I can't tell because there's no name. It's the cardstock variant.
Okay.
But it's it's really, really nice.
I'll go have a look at it.
Let me look. Oh yeah, it is Matina.
I'll. It's probably fantastic then. Oh, that's pretty nice. You're right. That's a really nice cover. Yeah. I have to admit, I didn't look at the Deathstroke covers because I didn't read it, but maybe I'll catch up for next issue, since I did enjoy issue 1. I just didn't have it in me for another book this week. I reached my limit and I was done.
I gotcha.
But cool. All right, best art of the week. What you got?
Ooh, this one's tough. Yeah, because I like the Robin art, but Mora's right there. But so I'm gonna go Schmidt with vampires.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, there's a lot of good choices this week. Schmidt is great on vampires. Mora's fantastic. Melnikov is solid. Joelle Jones is good. Barrows is solid at what he's doing. I'm tempted to go with Long Halloween with Tim Sale, but I think I still may like Mora just a little bit more. That's a tough choice. I'll give it to. It's not like I get to say Tim Sale often, right? It's not like there's a lot of books to pop up these days with Tim Sale's name on it. So I'll give it to Long Halloween. I'll give it the nostalgia bump. So yes, Long Halloween. All right, top 5 books, Matt, go.
All right, number 1, Robin. Number 2, Tech. Number 3, Deathstroke Inc. Number 4, Vampires. And number 5, Task Force Z.
Okay, my number 1 is probably Detective. Number 2 will be... I had a lot of similar scores this week. This is actually really hard. Usually I just think about my ratings and just go from there. But all right, yeah, number 1 is Detective. I'll say number 2 is DCV's Vampires. Number 3, I'll go Long Halloween Special. Number 4, Robin. Number 5, Task Force Z. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Nice and neat. And I'll take this time to tell you what is coming next week from DC Comics. So coming up next week, we have Batman 116. We have the Swamp Thing issue 9, the penultimate issue of season 1 of Swamp Thing. So stay tuned. We have Dark Knights of Steel issue 1, the new Tom Taylor alternate continuity book. So if you're into that kind of thing, I look forward to that. Batman Reptilian issue 5, Teen Titans Academy issue 7, Arkham City, The Order of the World issue 2. I really enjoyed issue 1 of that, so I'm looking forward to issue 2 of that. Human Target issue. I didn't realize there's already time for the new Tom King book.
Me neither. I'm very excited.
Yeah, big stuff next week. Joker Presents a Puzzle Box issue 4, Superman 78 issue 3, Batman the Adventure Continues Adventure Continues season 2 issue 6, Justice League Infinity issue 5, Batman Superman the Authority Special issue 1, Crushing Lobo issue 6, Mr. Miracle the Source of Freedom issue 6, and Soul Plumber issue 2. A lot of stuff there I don't read in the back half of that list, but there's a lot of good stuff in that first half. Oh man. So Human Target, Arkham City, Dark Knight of Steel, Swamp Thing, and Batman. So meaty stuff next week to sink our teeth into.
So the Batman Superman Authority Special is Philip Kennedy Johnson, and I think it plays into the Warworld stuff. So you might want to.
Okay, so you're thinking this might be worth reading then.
Yeah, it says following Mongols' brazen attack on Earth, Superman's role has been turned upside down. Conflict between Atlantis and the surface world, the discovery of an immensely powerful new element, dead refugees with mysterious ties to Krypton, and expulsion from the Justice League. When Superman reforms the experimental anti-establishment authority to join him in liberating Warworld, Batman comes with him for a request. Join him for one unorthodox off-the-books mission first. Maybe not. One he could never ask the Justice League to be part of, and one he doesn't expect everyone to come back from. No, having read all of that, maybe not. This doesn't seem to tie into Warworld outside of establishing the authority in current continuity, not the Morrison continuity.
All right. I mean, I might because it is Johnson, so it might be good. But
yeah, I'll be checking it out because there's not much else. You know, Dark Knights of Steel, Swamp Thing, Batman, Human Target. So if I can get Arkham City issue 1 read.
You should. It was good. I would recommend. You know what? It's another good horror book, Matt. Like seriously.
Yeah.
Good.
All right.
Creepy villain.
Oh, you have to tell me.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Oh, you gotta tell me.
Yeah. So cool. I just noticed on that cover of Batman Superman Authority. They've definitely got a bit of a Christopher Reeve vibe going for that Superman there. I'm noticing.
Let's
just
see who the artist is for that cover.
Pointing that out there. So no, that's pretty much the show. I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Short, Boardnow, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, David Brown, and Stanley. And of course, you can support us over at patreon.com/MailFuzzTV for as little as $1 per month and help keep all the content coming. You can of course support us for free by simply hitting the like button, subscribing, commenting on YouTube, or rating us 5 stars with a nice review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts from. All that stuff does help. You can share us out on the social medias. You can get us on Twitter at DC Comics Podcast. So hit that follow button on there as well. All good stuff. And of course, if you're a $5 or up patron, you do get the show a day early. You get it whenever it's out of the oven on a Saturday, and go from there. So thank you very much for joining us. You can, of course. Was there anything else to tell you? I don't know if there is. Maybe that's me. Maybe I'm done. No. There you go. So that's the show. That is episode 277. We're back next week, and maybe the ginger will return. Maybe he won't. Yeah. We'll find out. I don't know what his work schedule's like yet, but
we almost had Tim on this issue episode.
We did, yeah. Tim jokingly said he would pop on, and then we said, "Sure, we're not started yet. Come on!" And then immediately he was like, "Oh no, I'm looking after the baby." So he bluffed. He was bluffing. We called him on his bluff. I
still thought he should have came on with the kid. I think it would have been an episode like none other.
It would definitely have been a different episode, that's for sure. So yes, but yeah, thank you once again for watching and listening. We always appreciate it. Keep reading DC Comics. Just remember to never get lost in the Speed Force.
And Pete, on Halloween, everyone's entitled to one good scare.